In September 1644, a Portuguese Marano named Antonio de Montesinos arrived in Amsterdam after having lived for some years in South America, and proceeded to tell the leaders of the recently established Jewish community there's a story that caused them to think of him as a latter-day Eldad the Danite. Well, 2.5 years before he told them, while traveling in the wild mountains of Quito, he had heard some of his Indian guides remark that the natives of that country deserved all the suffering they had undergone at the hand of the Spaniards. When he asked to explain why they thought such a thing, that they had replied mysteriously that it was because we so badly treated a holy people. We so badly treated a holy people. They knew back then, folks. The greatest in the world. Nothing more had been offered by them on this point. But later in the same conversation, Francisco, one of the Indian guides, had declared that his countrymen would be avenged upon the Spaniards in time anyway, that our God will judge them by means of a people now hidden. The two references apparently were the same people, but Montesinos, not seeing their full meaning in that moment, he put the whole matter out of mind for the time being. Upon his return to Cartagena, the Judaizing Montesinos had found himself accused by the Inquisition and put in prison. Praying for salvation in his cell one day, he was reciting what was by then a standard formula, next page, among new Moranos. Blessed be the name of the Lord, who has not made an idolater, a barbarian, a Negro, an Indian. When suddenly be stopped, those Indians, he told himself, they are Hebrews. He says he told himself they are Hebrews. Pondering this thought incredulously and yet with growing conviction, he resolved that if he ever was released, he would seek out the Indian Francisco and try to learn the truth. Montesinos' story, unclear to the circumstances of incarceration, is equally unclear as to those of his release. But released he was, and he immediately went to Francisco, revealing himself as a Jew. Montesinos proclaimed his conviction that Francisco's hidden people were of the same race as he. Would Francisco lead him to them? The two men soon back in the rugged mountains in which Francisco had made his initial revelation, marching relentlessly for a week before they finally came to a halt. It was Saturday. Montesinos makes a point of telling us, and they had come to a river larger than the Duero, and there echoes of the Sabaton in all of this. In all of this, here, Francisco announced, is where your brothers will be seen. Waving a banner high in the air, the Indian guide soon was greeted by a puff of smoke far beyond the other bank of the river. In response to his signal, the two men waited. Eventually, a canoe appeared bearing 3 men and a woman, all of them Indians, to place where Francisco and Montesinos were standing at the water's edge. The woman got off and spoke to Francisco in an Indian tongue that Montesinos could not understand, although he could perceive that it was being identified in the conversation. She then turned to her male companions to explain the situation. Upon hearing her words, they rose, went over to Montesinos, and to his utter astonishment said, Shema Yasha Allah Adonai Allahanu Adonai Akkad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. They had recited in Hebrew the fundamental credo of Judaism. A brief conversation then ensued in their common ancestral tongue, according to Montesinos, whose fluency in it is almost perplexing to the reader of his narrative, as is that of these three mysterious new companions. They told him that they were themselves of the tribe of Reuben, and that the tribe of Joseph lived on an island nearby. Boom. See? So here it is, the tribes of Israel knew who they were before the Mayflower, before the white man came to colonize America. All of the tribes knew who they were. So when the conquistadors came, when the other people came, because the Vatican, and later the money of the Rothschilds and all of that was utilized to fast track an education system that would disconnect all of the tribes, not just Judah, the Bible. Is it hard to understand?
When it comes to reading the Bible, the first thing that comes to mind is the fact that this is the Word of God.
The seals have been broken, and the truth is here.
And when we go throughout the scriptures, when we go throughout extra biblical records, we find that the language that God employed, that He used to create the heavens and the earth, was the Hebrew language.
Christ said, I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But yet no one, no religious leader, no religious church out there anywhere can now identify the 12 tribes of Israel. Can we? God is quite simple, but it seems as if man makes understanding it hard.
What are those mysteries?
The truth of your book and the truth will make you free. The Hebrew and Bible Academy, you're invited.